Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we're going to have a 15-minute webinar covering the budget portion of ARGUS Enterprise. My name is Jessica Leal, and I'm going to be our instructor for our 15-minute webinar. Our agenda today is we are going to start with the basics. Where are our chart of accounts found in ARGUS Enterprise, and how do we assign them to portfolios? After we see how to assign these chart of accounts, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the benefits of it. So how do we standardize naming conventions across all of our properties within a portfolio? We're going to take a look and see another one of the benefits of having actuals and budget within the property. When we have actuals and budget entered into a property, we can then go in and see how to turn on our budget view and easily reforecast any of our revenues or our expenses. And then we're actually going to finish up with running different reports that show us our actuals and our budget on a monthly level, on an annual level, and then we will have 15 minutes of Q&A. So let's go ahead now. I'm going to bring up ARGUS Enterprise, and we're going to get started with seeing where our chart of accounts are in AE. Now, throughout our webinar, if you have any questions, please use your GoToWebinar console to ask any of those questions. We cannot hear you. You can only hear us, but you can ask any questions that you would like in the questions tab of that console. So let's go ahead now. And let's get started with where do we find our chart of accounts in AE. So from the ARGUS Enterprise main screen, on our navigation pane to the left, we have our chart of accounts tab. And this is where all of our chart of accounts are going to be stored. Now you can create new ones. If you already have it in Excel, then of course you can import that chart in, you can delete it, or you can make changes to any of our chart of accounts. And this is where they are all going to be stored. So after it is stored in ARGUS Enterprise, how do we actually utilize it within a portfolio? And that leads us really to the next portion of our agenda, and that's actually going in and assigning this chart of accounts. So from the ARGUS Enterprise main screen again, back in our Property Portfolios tab, if I'm creating a new portfolio, which I'm going to show you right now, if I create a new portfolio, I can name this Sample Portfolio, and just directly from this window, I can go to my Chart of Accounts section, hit that drop down, and all of the charts that I have created or imported in will be available for me. So I can hit my training chart of accounts, hit OK, and I can assign it this way. And that's just the very first way to do that. Now, if you already have a portfolio created, for instance, mine, my DCF to AE portfolio, if I decide now that I need that training chart of accounts assigned to this one, I can open up that portfolio. And as soon as I open up that portfolio, the way that I assign a chart of accounts through this screen is actually moving to my Portfolio Details Application tab at the very bottom of my screen. So if I click Portfolio Details, I can go up to the very first section of my screen and hit Edit. And when I hit Edit, I have a Chart of Accounts section. If I hit that drop down, I will also see all of the different charts that I can assign. And I'm going to assign my training COA. Now, once you assign it and you hit Save, if I wanted to go in and change it or make any go in and assign a different one or anything like that, I actually can't. Once you assign a chart of accounts, it is assigned to that portfolio forever, okay? So it is assigned, you cannot change it, and each portfolio can only have one chart of accounts. So those are our two ways to assign it. Now, once we go in and we have our chart of accounts assigned, the next benefit is really being able to standardize the naming conventions across your portfolios. So I'm going to go up to my Knowledge Series portfolio just to let everyone know in this portfolio I already have a chart of accounts assigned, my training COA, and if I get into my budget example 2 property, okay, I can actually go in, edit this property, and I can add in actual lines, budget lines, revenues, and expenses. I can add in all of these lines. That gives me the ability to go in and import actuals, import budget, and standardize naming conventions. Well, without a chart of accounts, there's really no point in adding in actuals and budget. And because we have it already stored for this portfolio, if I right-click, I don't have to add in my actuals and my budget line item by line item. I can right-click, choose Create from Chart of Accounts, and all of my accounts from my chart will be pulled up within this window. I can select all of them, hit OK, and now I have all of these line items that I can import in actuals to. If I wanted to import in budget, I can click on that budget tab and I could do the exact same thing. I can right-click, create from chart of accounts, select all of them, and hit OK. And it will pull in all of my different budget lines. So now I can import in actuals and I can import budget into this property. I can also go to my operating expenses. I can right-click, create from chart of accounts, select all, and I can add in all of my different operating expenses lines. So I can hit OK, and now I have all of my different operating expenses added in. And what's fantastic about this is that all of these different line items come directly from our chart. So if I go to my budget property, which is just right above my budget example property, and I go to my operating expenses, notice that I have all of the exact same expenses. So if I were to run portfolio level reports across this entire portfolio, all of my expenses would roll up to the same line items because they have the same account numbers, because they have the same naming convention. So that is one of the main benefits of having that chart of accounts as well. Now, of course, the other one is actually being able to have actuals and budget brought in. So I'm going to go ahead and move on over to my budget property. And when I move into that budget property, this property already has actuals and budget imported in. And it imports them in using those account numbers. So if I go to my property parent tab, actual subtab, if I take a look, I have some actual data imported in. If I go to my budget subtab, I have some budget data imported in. And what's great about this is if I go to my expenses and I take a look, I can click in the ellipses field, or in the amount field, I can click that ellipses and take a look and see what my actuals are, what my budget is, and what my forecast is. So I'm going to use real estate taxes as an example right now and click that ellipses next to the $150,000. Now, once I click that ellipses, it color codes it for us. So all of our actuals are going to be red, our forecast is going to be baby blue, and then our budget is going to be green. So you can see your actuals, you can see your forecast, you can see your budget as well. And you could even use this screen to run a reforecast. So if you took a look at the actuals that you already had imported in and you wanted to make changes, well, of course, we could do it just directly from this screen and run a reforecast right here. However, I can close out of this window and I can also turn on something called a budget view. And that also gives me the ability to reforecast a little easier. So I can highlight any one of my operating expenses, turn on my budget view by clicking that budget button just right on my ribbon. And when I turn on that budget view, if you take a look, this view is what's going to pop up down below. And now I have budget for 2018. I have actuals for 2018. So our property is, of course, an example property in the future for 2018. And then, of course, my forecast is using my budget. It's using that $150,000. So now that I have that $150,000, if I take a look at my actuals and I say, well, you know what, I don't think we're going to hit the $150,000. I think we actually need to change that to $130,000. Well, what I can actually do is just go to this total forecast line right here, change it to 130,000, and as soon as I do that, it will show me my variance. Okay, my variance is 20,000, and then it will show me my percentage, of course, which is 13%. Well, it will take this 20,000 and it will disperse it for the remainder of our year that we do not have actuals for. Okay, so it will take that and spread it out for the remainder of the year that we do not have those actuals for. And that is our budget view, and that's one of the fantastic things about it. And it's easy to move from one expense to the next. You could go to account name, hit that drop down, and choose any of your operating expenses, or you can use your previous and your next buttons just to move through your expenses and do reforecast. So that is our budget view. Now, the very last thing that we want to talk about when it comes to budget is actually going in. Oh, and we did receive one question. How do you get to the budget view again? So let me just show you that real quick. Once you're in the budget view, I can click my home view to get back to my normal toolbar, and you can turn it off just by going to the budget button. It's going to be directly to the right of your inputs and your reports button on that ribbon bar. So I can turn it off and I can turn it back on just by clicking your budget button. Okay, so now the very last thing that we want to take a look at is some of the different reports. So what are some of the greatest reports when it comes to having actuals and budget imported in? So what are some of our other reports that we're going to look at and the other benefits? And we're going to start at a property level, but then we're actually going to finish on a portfolio level. So from our interface, if I hit F3, it will actually move me over to my report screen. So I hit F3, I am back in my report screen, and once I get to that report screen, I'm going to go to my cash flow. Now, from your cash flow, when you have actuals and budget brought in, I can go to my report options button in the upper left-hand corner, and I actually get to pick and choose what pieces of information I want to report over. So do I want actuals, do I want budget, do I want forecast, or do I just want budget and forecast, or actuals and forecast, or forecast only? So I'm going to do all three. I'm running the report on a monthly basis, and then when I close out of my report options, it will show me my actual data, it will show me my budget data, and then it will show me my forecast for the remainder of my analysis. And that is our property level cash flow. Now we also have a property level budget comparison that's going to show you your 2018 budget, your forecast, the projected amount, and then of course the variance between your reforecast and your budget. And it will show you the dollar amount as well as the percentage. And the budget comparison on a property level is fantastic, but you can also run your budget comparison on a portfolio level. So if I go back into my portfolio and I click, using my navigator, click on that knowledge series portfolio, if I move over to my portfolio level reports, I actually have a budget comparison report brought up right now. Now, the way that I got to this budget comparison was I just hit open report, and it is found in that operations folder in the upper left-hand portion of my screen. And within that operations folder, I have that budget comparison. Now, with the budget comparison report on a portfolio level, what's fantastic about this is not only that it is reporting across the entire portfolio, but you also have the ability to add in comments here. And so we can go in to any line. I can hit edit comments. So if there is a variance and I want to go in and explain why there is a variance, if I hit edit comments, I can click the tiny little plus sign next to any line. So for instance, net operating income. I can click that, and then I have the ability to add in a comment. And once I add in that comment and I hit OK, I now can see all of the comments just by clicking that plus sign in our net operating income. I could see all of the comments that I have added in for that line. And I could do that for any place that I've added in comments. So total operating expenses, total expenses, move right over here and I could see all of my comments. So that is it for our budget webinar today. We're now going to use the remainder of our time for a little Q&A. Okay, and we actually received a really great question. And it says, if you are not using a chart of account, but your naming conventions for operating expenses are all the same, will operating expenses still be combined on a portfolio report? And the answer is yes. But what I want you to know about that is that if you're not using a chart of accounts, if you have even one typo or one space is off, you will have two separate expenses. And so what I mean by that is, for instance, if you in one property name an expense real estate taxes, and then in another property you name it real estate taxes, but there's two spaces between real estate and taxes, then you will have two different line items on those portfolio level reports. So that's why the chart of accounts is the safest way. But if everything else is perfect, even if you're not using a chart, it will combine them on a portfolio level. So that is a great question. The next question that we had from Jeffrey is, how do you import actual and budget detail? And really, there's a few different ways to do this. You can import in from Excel using our Excel for ADW feature, but also ARGUS does have the ability to, of course, connect to any other property management system that you're using. And our services team could even set it up to where your actuals import in on a monthly basis and your budget imports in on a monthly basis, or of course a quarterly basis. And they can set it up and time it for you. So there's many different ways that you can import in budget and actual data. So that's also a great question. The next question is going to be from Kyle. This is also a great question. It says, are you able to use the budget button section if the year you are modeling does not represent year one of your analysis? And the answer is yes. So actually, within the property, when you turn on the budget button, you can go in and you get to choose what year you are working on. So we do have the ability to do that. And actually my screen, one moment. And that's actually going to be your current budget year up at the top on your budget toolbar. So once we turn that on, if you hit that drop down, you get to choose what year you're going to be changing. And you'll see that you have many options here. The next question is going to be from Joe, and this is also a really great question. It says, if data is entered in as forecast, can it easily be transitioned to budget? And what I want you to see, if you take a look at my screen is anytime you enter in data in as forecast, you can go and highlight that property within a portfolio. So to answer this question, we do have to be on a portfolio level. And when you get back into that portfolio level, you want to make sure you're on your properties application tab and highlight whichever property you want to transition the forecast to budget. And what you will actually do is highlight that property and choose copy forecast to budget. Okay? And once you choose that, it gives you the ability to pick your year, hit next, and it will copy it over for you. So that's a great question, Joe. We also had a question that says, does a portfolio level variance report somehow consolidate variance comments, or are the comments prepared at the portfolio level as well? And that's from Robert, and that's a great question, Robert. And the answer is actually that you can only place comments on a portfolio level. So when we run this report, we're running the report through our portfolio level reports, and we can only place these comments on that portfolio level. So that is also a great question. And then we did receive one other question. That is a great question as well. It says, can actuals be changed once they are imported into an ARGUS property? And that's a fantastic question. And the answer is no, they cannot. Once you import in those actuals, whether it be from Excel or a property management system, they cannot be changed anymore within that property. So that's also a very great question. Alrighty, so I think that is the end of our webinar. We don't have any more questions at this point. So what we're going to do is I just have one last PowerPoint slide that just talks a little bit about some of our training options, and then we're going to go ahead and finish up with one last poll. And so I did want to let everybody know that in addition to these webinars, we do offer public trainings. We have some of the dates listed. If you have any coming up in your area and you need some additional training, we have some public trainings on Halloween and November 1st in Atlanta, Dallas, and New York, and then November 7th and 8th in Boston, Denver, Houston, and Vancouver. But if you don't have time to go to a public training, or if your area isn't listed, we also have online virtual-led trainings as well, where you can take a public session, or you can sign up for an annual subscription where you have access to all of our virtual training sessions. We do have private trainings as well. So if your company, has a customized agenda that you need to go through, we have private trainings. And then we also have case study manuals as well that allow us to go through and get some additional practice in AE. So I did want to let you know about some of our other training opportunities in case you were interested. We do have one last poll that we're going to go through, and after that, we are through with our webinar today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thank you.